All right, good morning. Good Monday morning, and good to see you on here. We're going to be in Ecclesiastes 3 again, and we're going to start taking each segment little by little, and breaking this up and seeing what the Lord would have for us to take away. And so look with me in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and in verse 1 as everybody jumps on here. Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 1. Good morning, Al, Mom, Joan. Good to see you guys on here, and kind of see who else jumps on here. But while we're waiting, we're going to look at Ecclesiastes 3 and verse 1. To everything there is a season, and to a time, to every purpose under heaven. Look with me in verse 2. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to be born and a time to die. These are most likely probably the two most important times in our life that we need to understand that life is a series of events that have a bookend of the beginning of life and the end of life. And so there's a specific time that God has given us for these moments. And, it was once said that all of life's happenings are comprised in the dash between the two dates on your tombstone. And so, when we think of eternity and things like that, the extent of our life is about the size of that dash. And so, what is life, and why does he say a time to be born and a time to die? Well, we read in Job chapter 7 and verse 1, you need to be quiet. Job chapter 7 and verse 1, is there not an appointed time to man upon earth? Are not his days also like the days of an hireling? It seems we are really to live life and we are to die in life at a very set point in time that God has given us. And that time can be shortened if we're doing evil, and it can also be extended if we refrain from doing evil. Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 17 says, "Be not overmuch wicked, neither be thou foolish. Why shouldst thou die before thy time?" And so we see that if we're given to a lot of wickedness and foolishness, that the Lord will actually shorten our days. And so this goes for those that are saved and unsaved. And what happens is God will sometimes sit back and say, it's better for me to pull you out of the world and you to stop living in the flesh and things like that than it is for you to remain there and continue to live the way that you live. Based off of averages and statistics and things like that, we see that the average lifespan today is 70 years old. And so if we consider that as the average, we also understand that some die very young and some will live to be 100, 110, 115 years old. And so there's a sliding scale, if you will, depending on each person and what God has purposed in an individual's life. Before the flood, people lived for several hundred years, and this was probably so that the world could be populated. And Methuselah, many of you may know that name, he lived the longest of any person we have of recorded history at 969 years old. And many historians believe that Methuselah died the day before the great flood happened with Noah. But God not only has provided the exact time of death, he's also given the precise time for birth. And so when we consider the story of Abraham and Sarah, they grew impatient. God said that He would give them many seeds, and these types of promises fell upon them, and they grew impatient with the promise. And what they ended up doing was Sarah gave Hagar to Abraham to try to force the birth of a child. And in that process, Ishmael was born, and Ishmael was not the chosen child of God. And so, in and through that, what would take place is that he would go on to